Oh, there's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with a short review of this 1936 novel from the UK, Begin Again, by Ursula Orange, recently reprinted by Dean Street Press in their fabulous furrowed middlebrow imprint. I read this a few weeks ago and I was prepared to be disappointed or underwhelmed or maybe merely entertained. It was an extremely entertaining novel, but it was also something more than that. I'm still grasping for words to convey what that little bit of extra je ne sais quoi was about this novel, because I loved it, and it wasn't just a romantic comedy. There was something kind of historical about it. It's set in the early 1930s in London and in the countryside outside of London, centering on a group of 4 female friends with some other characters and some other men thrown in for good measure. And these women are working, or they want to be working, and achieving independence from their parents. The parents are adorably, it would be the 1930s version of Hey Boomer. They're a little bit out of touch, but surprisingly much more enlightened than their young and sexually liberated children think they are. And the prose is sharp and whimsical, and the story is one of the most charming stories that I have read this year. I really wanted to share an excerpt to give you a sense of the writing, but I have been searching through it, and there's nothing that would convey the totality of the writing. I'm not going to do that, but I will end with a bit of a sensuous sentence. Jane and Florence are roommates, both working office jobs in London. Sylvia lives at home, but she is lovers with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend is Claude, or Claude. When there's no E on the end, is it pronounced Claude or Claude? My buddy reader Leah and I could never decide. They're referred to as lovers, so that means they're having sex. Jane has a boyfriend that she's not so happy with. Florence is single and a struggling novelist wannabe. The story opens with Leslie, who is still living with her widowed mum, wanting to break free and set up a studio in London as an artist. And Leslie is really annoying, and I think purposely so. She invites all of her friends to her home for a picnic because she wants her mother, who is concerned about her striking out on her own, to calm down and get to know the friends that she will be living amongst in London, and that all will be well. And so that's the premise of the novel. I thought that this novel explored the lives of young women in the 1930s in a way that, there was a lot of that I could relate to as a gay guy who was this age in the late 1980s in small town Saskatchewan or small city Saskatchewan. So there's stuff that's not historical, but there's a lot of other stuff that is. And what makes this narrative more complex is that there is storytelling embedded within the novel. So we have Florence, who's a novelist wannabe, and everybody who reads her manuscript says there's nothing happening here, which made me think it's probably a Shawn book. But she is trying to write a story of a woman. And I forget which character, but another character, there's an extended scene where she's reading some kind of a trashy romance story in one of the weekly magazines, and we hear a lot about that story. And then, of course, this is a story. And then going to the top tier, there is the story of the writer Ursula Orange, who I had never heard of until I bought this book. And Ursula Orange was born in 1909. I think she was born in India. Her father was part of the colonial administration there. She got married to Tim Tyndall in 1934, and this novel was published when she was only 27 in 1936, and then she wrote 2 or 3 or 4 more. One of her children is Gillian Tyndall, who is a writer that I had heard of before I'd ever heard of her mother, and she has written one of the go-to biographies of George Gissing, the 19th century British novelist. And she succumbed to mental illness and depression and institutionalization and apparently, by all accounts, committed suicide at the age of 46 in 1955. So her life did not end happily. And so I also was reading this book with that knowledge and enjoying the whimsical, charming tone of this, but also thinking about the life that its writer went on to read, which, you can't help do, but when you read a novel by somebody whose life ended tragically. So there's just a whole bunch of things to think about while reading this. There are a lot of fabulously well-drawn characters to sink into and enjoy. The sexual energy of this book is just fabulous. I was surprised. I mean, it's not overtly sexual, but they do talk with a certain, a relative amount of frankness about sexual matters, and that's really fascinating, and it was very enjoyable. And she also writes about the sexual friction between characters in a way that was just a delight to read. So I won't even bother telling you which character, because that might end up being a bit of a spoiler, but one of the women parts ways with her boyfriend near the end of the novel, and she takes up with another guy that she meets at this party. And they go for a drive. They're just getting to know each other, and it's not skanky. There's no kissing or touching or sex, but there's definitely a sexual energy between them. I'm only going to read you one sentence, but let me set it up. They go for a ride in his vehicle. His car. I think it's a car. I'm pretty stupid about vehicles. I think it was a car. And then he wants her to drive, and so she drives, but she's not much of a driver, so she drives for a while, but meanwhile they're flirting back and forth, and then she says, no, I want you to drive, and I want you to drive fast. I want to go fast in this car. And then this sentence. Quite a pleasant little business ensued of trying to crawl over and change places without getting out of the car. And I have to say, that is one of the most erotic sentences. I will be thinking about that sentence for a long time, and hopefully enacting it very soon. Wow. What a fabulous thing to have in a novel from 1936. If any of this sounds intriguing to you, I urge you to give Begin Again a try. I can't wait to read all of the rest of hers. Dean Street Press has reprinted 2 others. This was an absolute delight, and like I say, it's a light rom-com novel, but if you're open to it, there's a deeper layer of stuff to really enjoy as well. Because of all of that, I recommend it highly. Thanks for watching.